One of the most fundamental thing with any kind of business or any kind of pursuit is the simple action of knowing how to make somebody aware that you even exist. And I think there is no better resource in this pursuit to understand this concept like $100 million leads. Of course, this is us continuing to cover every and anything that I've been learning about entrepreneurship, as well as from Alex Hormozi and his lovely wife, Layla. Anyways, by the way, I'm looking at all the resources that was available to me. I do not have some sort of weird connection. Yeah, I'm in a no-name town in Canada, literally from nowhere, so yeah, doing my best. Anyways, with what is available. Also, side thing, I am not this confident in my body. It's so friggin' hot in Canada right now. I don't know what's going on. It's hell everywhere around the world, but Jesus Christ, it's so fucking hot. I'm sorry. Anyways, also, my hands are the way they are. Been born like that, just in case. Yep, new people see this. Hi. Anyways, back to $100 million leads. So first and foremost, I would like to kind of give some preface to this. I like to heavily absorb things that I think are extremely valuable. So for instance, I've read to death $100 Million Offer. I've listened to it, I think, like 4 or 5 times in audiobook form when I exercise or do anything outside of that. I've also taken a consistent crazy amount of notes whilst I also like listen to the audiobook and sit down in my chair, more like active, I guess, listening and absorption opposed to passive. So I probably read that book probably like 7 or 8 times. That sounds great. I kind of were born with a learning disability, or at least that's what they called it. Fuck those people. Anyways, point is, it may be good, maybe bad. But point is, I don't think I have absorbed to the extent in which I feel good about explaining $100 million leads, but this is my best shot. Especially considering I just kind of want to talk about this stuff with somebody. And if that's myself and you, and that's what we're gonna have to do. That's what we're gonna have to do. But of course, if you're not exactly interested into entrepreneurial stuff, I still think this book is extremely valuable. Yes, Alex Hormozi's book series about entrepreneurship and, scaling a business and such is targeted towards entrepreneurship, but man, I feel like it could apply to so many other things you could pursue. Anything YouTube-wise, tenfold. I kicked myself, man, because I learned so many things about like YouTube-specific things and all of these complexities, only to find out that business itself, outside of YouTube, has persisted for years and years and years. Since the founding of us, probably. I give you a coconut and you give me maybe wife. I know something. Yes, that kind of premise. Point being, I really wish I would have just read a lot of stuff about entrepreneurship because it so much relates to YouTube. Not exactly the transfer of the actual input, but the entire ecosystem of like, oh, that looks like a tidal wave about to smash me to death. Ooh, maybe we should move, maybe we should not be here in a market that is failing and so on and so forth, not growing. So the core concept of this book, the $100 Million Lead, is defining what a lead is in general and how to basically, I think if I were to make it as simple as possible, it is simply 1, making people aware that your thing exists, and 2, I guess all of the ways that you can do that, and 3, all of the ways that you can like massively leverage these kinds of things. I think there's parts in it that kind of speak to this idea of like selling. So it was one thing to say like, hey, I'm over here. It's another thing then when somebody approaches you to be like, I have no game plan. This is as far as I think I'd get. This book, if memory serves, kind of dabbles in like, okay, here's a baseline framework for you to work from there. But having seen a lot of Alex Hormozi's like video content, he goes more into that in his video content and most likely into his 3rd book, which I'm so excited for, which I thought was going to be called $100 Million Lead, or sales, but instead it's called Models. A part of me kind of hopes he doesn't stop making the books because there's a lot of aspects of business and I really don't like the idea of him being like, I didn't have time, so we're gonna forget step 5 and 6, because I feel like oftentimes whenever I'm learning something, I'm like, I feel like there's a gap here, bud. I feel like I'm pretty lost in this transitional period that you haven't, okay. And then these motherfuckers are always like, buy my $6,000 course. And you're like, I just want to kill myself. I'm over this. And honestly, one of my favorite concepts for this whole book, in all of his books, are that he goes out of his way to make it like needlessly simple so that you can just easily wrap your head around it. Even the complexity comes across as like understandable building blocks. And it's funny because he mentions this a lot in the book, that's ultimately your goal in a lot of ways. It's not about what you want. It's in a lot of ways, it's all about what your customer in this context perceives. So it's about what they feel and how they feel it. So why be needlessly complex when you might cannibalize or dissolve the person's capacity to say yes, or be interested in what you're talking about, so on and so forth. Anyways, one of the concepts he lays out in this book, which is really clear, is what he means by a lead. And that you don't actually just want leads, you want engaged leads. And the idea, if you guys don't even know what a lead is, a lead essentially is anyone who is now aware of your content and is kind of coming to you. I guess that's the difference of an engaged lead, that he draws a line in the sand. Where a lead might be like, oh, I know about Nike, right? Sure, everyone knows about Nike. But are you motivated to go with their shoes? Probably not. Probably like, I have my own brand that I like, or I got shoes that work perfectly fine. But maybe you're in the mall, or you see an email pop up on your thing, or you see a YouTuber that you like show off like the weird self-tying laces that like Nike or whomever is going to start selling. And you're like, oh, that's always been a dream of mine. I've loved Back to the Future forever. So now you become an engaged lead. You now know of Nike, but now you're interested in something that they're actually selling. And ultimately, the only thing you're really after when you're starting a business of any kind, or any pursuit of any kind, starting a YouTube channel, starting a Twitch channel, anything, is just how to generate that, how to get your name out there, and then how to make it so that people are actually interested and in what you're doing, aka your name, I guess, the brand power, all these kinds of weird things. Also, if I ever roll my eyes like that, it's just because some of the times, oh man, I could go on a little tangent with this, but so many people in like the entrepreneurial space hijack terms and corrupt the shit out of them, and they make them feel like disgusting, like brand power, and it's all about like scamming the shit out of your audience. And this again is why Alex Hormozi has been a breath of fresh air a lot in this space, at least to me, is because a lot of the fundamentals that he preaches is like, no, you could do that. You could like scam people or like give them a bad deal, but ultimately at the end of the day, it's about the value you can create for someone. That's like longevity. That's actually going to make it so that you have something that lasts and generates money over year, rather than just being a spike and then you lose that money anyway and da-da-da. Anyways. So that's the definition. You're not just looking for leads, you're looking for engaged leads, people that know who you are and are interested in actually pursuing whatever you're buying. But before you get into the nitty-grittiness of leads, you need to first have an offer. Again, I really wish there was a book before the offer, but the point is, you need to first have an offer, which is why it's his first book, and then the second book is $1 Million Leads, and then the third book is going to be $1 Million Models. So this is kind of like whatever you're going to do for someone, the who and the what. Kinda. And then leads is, okay, how do you make people know about the who and the what? And then the third book, I believe, is like, okay, here's an actual like business loop or cycle or model that is going to basically facilitate your success. And if you have all three, then you might be able to succeed. But here's hoping there's, maybe a fourth one. Anyways, 'cause I feel like they're missing them. Anyways, so one of the things he talks about with like lead generation, if I'm not mistaken, is this kind of like, one of the things I like about these books a lot is that he basically takes you from like a ground zero level of like, oh, okay, instead of you thinking like, oh, I already know this, just assume that you don't. Assume that you have no idea about this person. What kind of thing did they go through? Like, imagine you're let's say you're making something for stay-at-home moms, maybe like that dietary thing that we were talking about beforehand. So that's like kind of the offer-ish thing that you know. So you know a little bit about who you're targeting, your market, and then you know a little bit about something that you're trying to offer to somebody. Maybe it's a dietary plan or something. But in order to make someone aware of you, it helps to understand what that exact person, at least this avatar of them, would go through, essentially. So, what are the kind of things that I'm going to be able to reach them? They probably are more on Instagram than they would be necessarily on like LinkedIn. Okay, they're probably also on YouTube, and they probably also follow a certain amount of people. Okay, maybe they also follow like certain types of Facebook groups, specifically with moms and whatever it could be, especially with diet. So these are all the ways of like, okay, this is the lived experience of this person. They wake up, they take care of their kids, they try to manage everything that they need to manage, and these are the things in which they kind of have moments or gaps in which you maybe possibly could reach them. But even still, just understanding the life cycle in which they go through can help you understand how you can actually reach them and generate a lead from them. And he defines this as going through this like unaware to then aware of you kind of process. He also goes into moments, and I wish he made a book called like Algebra, like the algebra business basically, because he does a really good job of explaining things that I would just be like, this is grating to listen to, in a way that actually makes you be like, oh, okay, I understand the mathification of all this. He goes through and breaks down like ROI and things I'm sure you guys have heard, I'm sure everyone's heard of, but I don't know if you know the context and why it's variable. Like, I'm not sure if this is in the book because I haven't like taken notes on everything, but one of the things I've learned from his videos, which is really helpful, is like the elegant balance of things like how much, and it's kind of not too complex, so forgive me if this is very basic. There's various things within your business that you should understand for like cost of fulfillment, and also the cost of like ad spend, or like the cost of acquiring a lead is what he defines it as, which kind of encompasses like whatever kind of the core four that you use, which are the core 4 ways that you can generate a lead. But also talking about like lifetime value of your entire business within a yearly time period, and just being able to perceive when like you're going downhill and then when you're going uphill, as well as understanding like ratios and how important they are. So like for an easy way to understand it is, if you had a ratio of, let's say, you sold an item for $100 and it cost $40 to make, but it took you maybe like another $40 to basically get a lead, so to pay for the ads or to spend time on hiring someone to like reach out for you, or spending your own personal time to reach out for you, so on and so forth, if you don't have any other main income source. At the end of all of that, after the ad spend and after the cost of fulfillment, you may only make like $20 extra, which is pretty tough. But he says if you have a better ratio of actually being able to make significantly more money, for instance, if you're charging like $200, then you start to make a little more. But the way he defines it, which I think is much more clever, which was take how much it costs to fulfill the order, then take the ad spend, and then times it by 2. That way, you're basically, if you make one sale, you're basically paying for the next person, and that way, at least your business model is kind of barely like manageable. But yeah, that's kind of the what, at least to me, it was defined as in a really interesting way. And then he also talks about how like it's amazing if this ratio can be even greater. So like you make one sale and then you pay for the acquisition of 10 with the ad spend, the cost of fulfillment, so you're like way ahead. And of course, it's not exactly how that works, because it's just a baseline of giving you more. You could not just spend that on 10 extra customers. You could spend that on possibly increasing your lead generation magnet, or your product, or your offers, so on and so forth. There's thousands of things you can invest in to scale your business that would be probably helpful to you. But the point is that it's always nice to try to make as much profit as possible so that you can invest that back into your business and offer better things, if not scale it up to be more. And this is kind of why that endless consumerism, grow kind of mentality persists and exists. So yeah, it makes more sense to me when we're getting to trillions of dollars. Maybe we chill out a little bit. Maybe we start to fucking relax a little bit. Yeah. So one of the things that was the best about his first book, and I think he touches on this throughout this entire book, but it's kind of like it helps to understand that, which is like business is oftentimes a ratio. And the best way to understand a ratio, in my opinion, is the idea of you put 1 coin in and you get 10 out. That's the fucking dream, right? That's an infinite money machine. So he talks about advertising being similar to this, but a lot of people don't have the endurance for it. So let's say you assign yourself, and this is probably the best way to do it, assign yourself like, okay, 60K or something like that, maybe not even that much, of like ad spend that you're gonna spend this year, and you have to spend all of it. So what happens is oftentimes you do advertising, you try to find the right thing, you try to find the right source, and he talks about this in the book too, of like, why, like, don't bust your entire ad budget on something that's a guess. Market, and you've heard this before, I'm sure, but like do a test run of ads and see which one got the best input, and then do that again, pull the ad back, refine it, building off of the baseline of what worked on that one, and do it again and again and again until you have a decently compelling ad. And then after you think you have a good hit rate, then put some money behind it. But you need to but even that you're gonna have to be comfortable with like spending like $100 to $200 to $300 to $1,000 to play with this thing until you get it. But the baseline of advertising that I think persists in his entire book and his theory is that you might bet, or you might put 1 coin in and get nothing out. You might put another coin in and get maybe 3 out. Hey, you may put another coin in and get nothing out again. If you're doing it right, you probably put 1 coin out. If you got nothing, you fucking go to the drawing board. You put a coin in. Okay, now I got 3. Okay, you're on a better track. Do it again and again and again. But eventually, and this is kind of the idea of advertising and how like it is the kingpin of lead generation in a lot of ways, it seems like, which is it's just infinite scale. So just like people say a lot with business, which unlike baseball or football or whatever, there's only so much you can do. Like, let's say baseball, this is like the Jeff Bezos analogy, but if you swing and you hit a home run, you basically, all of your team runs through, fantastic. But you only ever get the amount of players that you had for one entire run, right? Whereas in business, it's not just, I don't watch baseball, is it 6 or 7? I don't fucking know. It's not 7 or 8x, whatever. It is bazillions x. So the idea is just like with advertising, you're gonna spend 1 coin in, maybe get nothing, another coin, hopefully get something, hopefully refined, hopefully you're not spending so many coins, they're not so expensive to spend. But eventually, when you finally do get the thing to spend, and this is the thing that I think he also talks about, which is like you're gonna eat shit even if you're trying to be careful, like trying to manage and test the ad perfectly. But the point is, you'll spend 10K, lose, not generate the profit that you were hoping for that 10K. You'll spend another 10K. You'll lose again. You'll spend a third 10K. Holy shit, we're halfway through our budget. Still, you got like maybe half of what you wanted. Great, still not covering the fucking ad spend that I'm doing. What the fuck? You do another 10K, and then maybe, just maybe within one spend of that one 10K ad push, you make 100x, or maybe you just make enough to break even. But the point is that you could theoretically not just make 100x, but make a fucking giga crazy amount more. So that's essentially the idea, which is also terrifying, because like, what if you don't have the fucking infrastructure to, you know, to support the amount of like accidental lead gen you made? And I guess maybe that's why like pricing is so important, where it's always better to aim for higher pricing. Oh, dude, that's a whole thing I could ramble about. But by the way, just a real quick pause. I have watched so much stuff, guys. It is kind of coagulated in my head. I don't know if this is in the book or if it's in a video I watched and took notes on, or what. Fighting for my life here a little bit, trying to manage where it's coming from. Consider this just a shotgun blast of random shit I've been learning about, okay? Anyway, one of the things he mentions in the book, I think, and it's like kind of like a tagline, but again, it's like this fundamental knowledge of like why leads in general are so important. Where like, if you can imagine, you have just like a bunch of starving people constantly coming to you. Maybe you're like, we take away the offer aspect and people just know about you. Maybe you're like a renowned crafter who's just never pursued making something that's useful or for sale, but everyone knows you and everyone knows you can bring it, etc. That's infinitely valuable if people constantly are coming to you. You basically, and this is what he says in the book, something like, you'll never be poor if you constantly have a ton of leads coming towards you. Especially when he talks about something in the previous book, Offers, which is like the one thing that you could have above everything. And I'm curious if you guys could know it. Probably should put this in the last video, but I'm curious if you guys could take a guess and maybe edit it if you got it right. But if you could have anything in business, what would it be? Would it be like a really unique idea that no one else has? Would it be infinite like scaling capacity? Would it be like a great location? Would it be like great supply chain? What would it be? And in the book, he makes a really good argument of, well, the one thing that you'd want above anything, well, your only competitive advantage would be a starving crowd. And it's such a fun thing to think about because he gives the example of like a hot dog stand of like, you could set up a really, really shitty hot dog stand in a really shitty location and have the worst hot dogs and have like a really shit attitude and all of those things. But if you can find that starving crowd, if you can go to like a football game right as they just got victory or right as they just lost or something, and you standing there with your hot dog stand, you're gonna sell out. So the idea is to find that group of people that's starving. And I've heard this echoed thousands of times, especially within YouTube videos of like, find the most valuable idea or like find the people who need the help the most. But I feel like it's funny because like framing is everything, I think, in a lot of ways. You can hear something 1,000 times, but until you hear the person say the right thing in the right way, then it all makes sense to you and you're like, oh, that's actually actionable. That thing you just said, the words you just used, made my brain synapse explode. And I also think it is a skill. I don't think it's just a chance-based thing of you just keep detonating the coin, or flipping the coin, sorry, and eventually you'll get that thing to hit. I think it's also something that, yeah, you can develop a skill of knowing exactly what will resonate the most. Also, if this video doesn't exist, that sucks because it's storming outside too. You might think, what a nightmare. It's raining, thunderstorm, and it's hot? Yep. We're in Canada. We're not in like the tropic, yeah, okay. So this is something that I definitely got to go back and take notes on. But he talks about this idea of lead magnet. So you have your lead, and then you have the various ways that you can actually generate leads that are almost, and he has this thing that he always defines in his books, which are basically, I always forget the way he phrases it, but basically it's a high investment, infinitely detonatable thing that you create once. So a book, for instance, would be that. You spend a lot of upfront time investing in this thing, but then after many years, it can continue to bring in a yield for you. This can also be the simple action of like creating an email list. This can also be creating a text chain. This also can be creating a YouTube channel around a product or a service. It's also going to be making a Facebook group, but it's anything that you can, yeah, it's a shitty amount of time to invest in. Some of these things probably are a bad example because they take a long time to invest in the beginning, but then are easier after. There are also other examples where like you make a dietary or exercise course and that's forever done. You just have to then generate all your assets into lead generation usually, and then optimizing it a little bit more, maybe adding on to it a little bit. But yeah, largely you finish it and then you can infinitely sell it afterwards, right? So a lead magnet is simply defined as anything that makes a person aware and or an engaged lead. So things like ebooks, things like email chains, webinars, you doing like a course on YouTube, you doing like a tutorial, anything that like makes people aware of you, and then you can squeeze in what you do and ideally your offer. and this is a sneak peek into, I'm not sure if it's this book, but I think it's probably this book, where every single problem he says, and this is something I think people should take away from everything. If you're making YouTube content, if you're streaming, if you're doing anything that kind of involves making people aware of you and then offering them anything, whether that's attention or something actual, substantial, or service, it would be really great if then you could basically continue to have them watch you, continue to have them and take your content, continue to buy from you. And he basically talks about this infinite loop. It's a simple loop of problem, solution. So every single solution will lead to another problem, because people don't just pause. They don't just take the dietary thing and then freeze and continue to not live and eat and experience life and all of the problems that encompass it. More or less, they continue to live. So it's really important for you to understand, okay, what happens after they get their dietary thing happening, and they're able to maybe achieve it, or maybe they're able to not. Both of these lead you to problem areas where you can continue to solve. So it's problem, solution, problem, solution, problem, solution, and it continues to cycle infinitely and infinitely and infinitely. This is also in some part why like the upsell, I think, can kind of be related to this, which is, yeah, you're going to eventually encounter these problems, and these are all the ways we can get ahead of that. If you've ever looked at any sort of like live membership thing, or like, Lighting is going crazy. Like, have you ever downloaded an app and it's like, hey, do you want to pay us $5 a month for what shouldn't be paid for $5 a month? Anyways, they usually give you a list of things that they're actually going to do and they're actually going to solve that you're not even thinking you're going to experience. Like, hey, you wanted to download this like cool book reader, right? Well, we provide so many books for free. Isn't that great? But we also allow you to download it offline mode. Isn't that kind of nice? Wow, we also offer one free book from a mainline publisher per week. Yada, yada, yada. So like there's a whole list of things where like, oh, I didn't even think about that, but that sounds good. So you're constantly doing that. So again, it's kind of introducing you to problems you don't even know you have, and or wants you didn't even know you wanted yet. But anyways, the fact that it's an infinite cycle, I think, is really helpful to learn. And yeah, another thing that's talked about in the book is the kind of talk about A/B split testing, kind of more like just testing, essentially the importance of, say you have anything, it's really important for you, let's again, an offer or whatever. The idea that somebody's actually excited to pursue what you're going to offer is exceptionally important. And it's something that, like, one of the things I like about the book, that he basically deconstructs how difficult this is. Like this idea, like, oh no, how am I going to do that? Do I have to talk to people? Oh my God. And it's like, no, it can be something as literally as simple as like, hey, finding the 10 people that would be interested in like a fitness course or something like that. And then you're offering a dietary course, and then reaching out to them and asking them, hey, would you pay money for this? That's like step 0, honestly. But even if you didn't want to do that, you could even just simply like put a post on YouTube and say like, hey, this is the thing I'm offering. Would you be interested in it? And you could go into the comments, you could go into a link, you could also send out an email, you could also do so many things. You could also pay for like a really small ad and see how many people even click on the ad. And this could be really helpful as well if you actually know what you're doing with ads, so you know how to like specialize targeting a particular group of people, like older people or in this specific region of the world who are searching up these kind of things, so on and so forth. So like if you do that and you can actually see that like no one clicked on the ads, you might be really bad at making a fucking visual ad, but it also it could be just that you are targeting the wrong person, or don't have a compelling offer. I bit my lip. But anyways, it's the help of like actually being able to split test, and how you don't really need a lot. You're just hoping for better than fucking nothing, which most people have. Most people are like, I'm just gonna run into it, and you're like, why? You just spent so much time trying to figure this out. So one of the things he talks about is like the core 4. I might as well get into that now, because I don't want to lose anybody before I can tell you some cool things. One of the things they talks about is the core 4 of lead generation, which is basically cold calling. So that is just basically being able to phone random people. So you go on and you can go to various websites that give you just like a stack of people who might possibly be in your specific section of the market that you're trying to target. And then you just phone them. Email them is also an option. Basically reaching out in any capacity to someone who is not aware of you. So they are not a engaged lead. They are the opposite. They're a 0 lead. So your goal is to not even sell them necessarily. Your goal is just to make them aware of you, and to do your best to explain what you're going to do for them. If you're really good, and this is something he talks about, which is like, this is one of the things that's a skill set where like you can just, it's kind of like sales, essentially, hardcore sales, specifically under the doctrine of phone call, lead gen, emails, things like that, where you have to interact with someone from 0. Anyways, Then there is a warm outreach, which is also, I say cold call. It's cold outreach and warm outreach, sorry. Warm outreach is some people who actually know you, which is defined exactly in that way. So it's not just about like phoning everyone in your phone list, which is oftentimes what I hear it's defined at. But if you're like me and you're like, brother, I haven't kept up with most people since high school. I'm kind of a hermit. It's kind of a problem. Anyways, point is, you're like, well, that doesn't apply to me. But it's defined specifically that as warm outreach, and it's better defined as it's anyone who is passively, even slightly aware of you. Can you reach out to them? So now they're no longer cold because they're at least aware of what you're doing and what you potentially could offer. And then you want to go to them. So again, this is why one of the other things goes perfectly in tandem with this, which is the other thing is content. So content doesn't have to be YouTube content. It can be Facebook content. It could be a website that you upload blogs on. It could be anything. Anything in which you actually produce content that has the possibility that people could see it. And this kind of trains into, you could develop content, a newsletter, a website, a Facebook page, a Instagram following, whatever, a YouTube following. And all of these are now people who are warm to you, who are aware of you, right? And then you can reach out to them in the various ways you always can. And make them an offer. And more often than not, you're not going to make them an offer. You're just going to turn them into an engaged lead, i.e. tell them what you're going to hopefully offer them. And hopefully you do that. It's another section of the book where you offer free stuff. So by offering free stuff and trying to get ahead of the weird flags that they're detonating of like, this guy's trying to sell me some bullshit. Instead, you're like, no, I'm trying to give you the most amount of value that I possibly can. That's the hope for me. And then hopefully I've generated enough value for you to where you believe that I'm not trying to screw you, which is true. And then I'm going to make you an offer that I think is equally as valuable as the things I gave away for you for free. That's, I think, the dream outcome. Oh, and then the last one is ads. So that's why it's called the core four. But this is also why he suggests immensely from basically doing these two. So if you're like have no experience in any of these things, it's really helpful to do content creation and warm outreach, because they facilitate each other and they cost nothing usually to make besides like a phone and such to start filming or recording or doing something of value for them. But there's one concept that I kind of came to the understanding of, and it kind of was when I was learning about this idea of like ratios, especially with him, and it really helped me to understand like this core concept. It's something that I almost wish he made a video about, or not a video about, sorry, like a whole book about. If there's anything else I could ask for, like a book from Alex Hormozi outside of the zero fundamental of like, is it going from nothing to all of the things that can detonate you from understanding your skill set, what you could possibly offer, and then maybe this could be in the same book, all of the skills that are high leverage that you could take a couple months to learn and fucking benefit wholeheartedly from. So this is something that he talks about in some of the videos I've seen, which is like high leverage skills. So he talks about sales and marketing and acquisition being extraordinarily valuable. These are things that if you learn just this one skill, which could take no more than like a couple months, if not all three of them in a year if you want apeshit. And if you learned all three of those, you would have this idea of like the ratio of I put 1 coin in and I get 10 coins out. And I wish he'd made a whole thing about that, about like these are all the skills that are like that. You put 1 coin in and you get 10 out. This could be coding as well. I think coding absolutely fucking facilitates this. Any of those things where if you could just suffer for like, let's say 3 or 4 months, you could learn this skill set and you could have an infinite scalable thing that could be valuable for years for you now. And this is something that I was thinking about with YouTube, especially for like my own personal circumstance, which is this concept of, okay, let's say you make YouTube videos, and I worked really hard in trying to figure out all the ways in which people care about YouTube videos, the algorithms, the CTRs, the meticulous data aspect of it, the marketing, the avatar generation, the like research and spending hours and hours on hand and looking at what people in your circle and environment and market are also selling to people, all of these things. But I remember way back in the day when I was floored for just getting 100 views on something. It's like I was on top of the world. But then as time goes on and everyone else starts getting significantly more views, you're like, man, what am I doing different? But it's funny when I think about this when it comes to business. So if you approach content creation or just content in this way of like, okay, ultimately I'm trying to generate as much value as possible so that then I can get a engaged lead, and so that then maybe I can make a sale and then I can actually make money off that, subsist my life. Great. So you're not depending on YouTube's ad revenue program at all. You're only focusing on satisfying and catering to your audience or your core customer base as much as humanly possible, which is funny because by doing that, you tend to just explode anyway on YouTube. Anyways, but it really, to me, was freeing that you don't need to get a bazillion views on YouTube every week. You could get 100 views on a single video. And so long as a decent portion of those views are people who are now aware of you and possibly interested in you, and are willing to maybe subscribe to a newsletter, maybe subscribe to the channel and follow you for what you do, maybe follow you on Instagram where you post this thing or service that you do, whatever it could be. So it makes it so that the barrier of what you need to succeed can be significantly lower and tighter. And I mean, you can, at the very minimum, just with good editing and good communication, get 100 views. So at the bare minimum, you know what I mean? So to me, that was a really compelling concept of again, YouTube can oftentimes feel like you put one coin in or you put 10 coins in and you get one coin back out and you're like, well, shit, what, man. Whereas also it's sorry, I jump around a little bit too much, but another concept is that it stacks. So over the course of many videos, and if you constantly do what Alex Hormozi suggests, which is every single time you solve a problem for free, you lead to another problem. And then you solve that problem, and then you lead to another problem, and you solve that problem, and you lead to another problem. And then hopefully, eventually, when you feel like I've done enough, I think I've given enough to where I think I could ask for $20 for this thing that I think you'd. All right, my whole power just went out, so we're gonna try to I'm gonna start becoming more rambly, because Jesus, I almost lost all that. I'm gonna lose my mind. Oh, so that's one of the things I'm kind of getting mixed signals for, because I think in the book I heard this, and then I think I watched videos that kind of contradict this a little bit. But I think it's because it's not a complete answer. I think in the book he talks about having multiple leads, or how valuable it is having multiple lead sources. So having content creation and warm outreach work really well together, because it's attainable, it doesn't have a lot of upfront cost and all that. But in videos, he's also talked about just pick one of these. I think it's probably because he's gotten a lot of feedback that probably was people trying to juggle all three of these and learning that oh yeah, it took me 5 years maybe, or probably less honestly with him, to learn one of these things and to become proficient in one of these things. So that's why he says, learn one, maximize one to the most you feel like you've genuinely gotten that tapped out, and then move on. So again, some of these things are defined in the book specifically, things like cold outreach, warm outreach, and then he talks about things that are like referrals. He also talks about an affiliate system. He also talks about something called agencies, which is interesting. So for instance, agencies, he gives the specific criteria, if I'm not mistaken, where he basically says, don't use agencies how they're traditionally used, because oftentimes, you guys don't know, you would go to an agency of some kind and they'll be like, hey, we'll generate this many ads for you, or we'll reach out to this many clients, or so on and so forth. They'll offer you some kind of service that the agency is good at. Usually it's advertising of a kind. But the issue with that is that oftentimes they'll basically give you their best guy for your first 2 weeks, and then they'll swap out somebody who's less skilled at generating ads and making everything work, right? And then eventually you'll complain, they'll put their number one guy back on it, and then it will oscillate forever, and you'll get really weird diminishing returns or oscillation within what you're investing in, right? Not so great. But instead, he says, if you actually were to go to these agencies instead, to approach them as like a mentorship premise, the idea being, hey, instead of me paying you a bunch of money every single month, or not a bunch of money, a small amount of money every month for my overall business, could I pay you a more generous lump sum, even somewhere between like 10K to even more, for you to come in, teach us for a week or maybe less, and then after we get up and running, and you've taught my people how to do this, then can we move on to like the word's escaping, but basically kind of like a mentor, but for long sprint. If there's ever an issue, I'll call upon you, see if there's something we're messing up. You can come in, adjust, and all that kind of stuff, and we'll pay you then and all that stuff. So it's still good for them. It's still a business where you're probably going to get residual income or residual referrals. Especially if they're continuing to provide value, you'll keep coming back for them, learning more stuff, and paying them, etc. So it's still, their business model isn't like, well, now our business model isn't stable because we're not getting residual income, things like that. But it makes sense. Anyway, he also talks about like how all of these core four can kind of be scaled. So you can build a team that just cold calls people all day. You can build a team which knows how to manage and like almost use the word, what is it called? Onboarding kind of situation. So you take all of your leads essentially, or your community, or from your content, then you create them into an engaged lead, and then it's basically just an onboarding process that eventually gets them to seeing your offer, deciding to buy, and then everything that comes after that is all the value that you're generating for them. The emails that you send with free stuff that hopefully got them to buy, and it's something that, oh man, oh, I'm the worst. I didn't even talk about that with the offer book. Oh my God, there's like a whole section about like stacking value and like how you should go about adding like free referrals and also contingencies. I think I might have talked about the contingencies, but like, hey, if we don't meet your expectation of some kind, you don't have to pay us. But oftentimes he always puts a critique in there of, you need to still do something. So you need to still like do the first 2 weeks, and we need to have some way of verifying that you're doing the work for 2 weeks, just so that you're not like buying and then refunding, because that will just be hell on our business and our marketing team, or not marketing team, our financing team. So yeah, he gives the example of like, if you're willing to like try this exercise course for 2 weeks and you don't see any results, you can refund it. Hell, you can go all the way to the very end, and at the very end, even though you may look great, you can still refund it. But you gotta at least do 2 weeks to do the thing. Or the whole gambit, and he talks about how very little people will ever say no to that, because usually you're able to provide some fucking value, you know. Again, his whole years of doing, he said he had like 2 people that ever took him up on that, which is pretty good about like the hundreds that he sold, hundreds and hundreds that he sold. Anyways, but as I talk your ear off, man, I definitely have to read more of this book. It's funny because I have so many things in my head that are fragmented, and I like to connect things to make it make more sense. But I got all these weird things in my head that I remember from listening to his book. And I think to me it's weird, but like taking the notes and having to like redefine them in your own words helps a lot. Outside of just listening to them constantly, because you'll always have that thing when you're working on it, like, that's a really cool thing, I hope I don't forget that. You immediately forget it. So it's just kind of a mess. But definitely a great book for understanding lead gen. Again, the reason why I haven't went through and read the shit out of it, like took notes, I'm still on Offers, is because I read Offers, magical book, started listening to leads, equally magical experience, but then I kind of came to the conclusion of, I need to go to 0 instead of 1, or what feels like sometimes 2, i.e. I need to really understand what I can offer people, what my skill set could possibly provide, how I could get a new skill that's high leverage, or so on and so forth, and all the different like business models that possibly exist that then could like kickstart your brain and be like, I think I could do that, and I like that business model, and that makes sense to me, and I could probably pursue that, and this is that. And there is things, by the way, that they do talk about, where like this is if you start from ground zero. A ton of videos on it, but I just never felt like they were as good as all of these other books that they're making, which is tough, because it's like, I think it's the most important out of all of these. Maybe not to them because they're at such a high level. But if the dream vision for Alex Hormozi is trying to like make as many new entrepreneurs as possible, and making people believe they have the capacity to succeed, and actually let them succeed, and teach them what they need to do to succeed, all the things that he wished he knew when he started, I think that's the core fundamental that I don't know, maybe it's wrong to say that they're missing, but it feels like at least it was missing for me, but maybe I missed something, you know, even though I tend to be good about that, checking all my dots and all that stuff, and making sure I'm like, there's nothing about this, like starting from 0. But alas, it could just be me. Again, I adore these books. I would highly advise people listen to them. It's just useful. I will say it is also useful in the sense that it is trying to help you specifically with this problem, like entrepreneurship, and trying to understand how that whole system works, and good fundamentals to live your entire business life by. But it's ultimately that. It's a very fun and very techie but simplistic business guide. I say simplistic not to mean the book, to articulate that you don't, if you ever read a business book and you're like, this is way too much fucking weird shit for me, like too many complex algebra like nonsense that just makes my brain go no. None of that's really there. And yeah, I adore the book. I might make a part 2 to this just because I feel like I want to do it proper justice, and I kind of had to make a video for today, so forgive me. I'm going on like a weird vacation because our grandparents are getting older and we want to go see them, so we're heading out to Portugal, just so we don't regret anything about not saying hi and spending time with them for one last hurrah. But alas, ladies and gentlemen, thank you kindly for your time. Hope I can see you once again. Please go check out Alex Hormozi and all the videos he does and content he does. I very much have gotten a lot of value out of it. I'll do my damnedest to try and get to actually show I have something for it, like to prove I'm using it. It's easier said than done, but I'm doing my best, even though research paralysis is definitely a thing that people can cope with, and I hope I'm not doing that, but alas, boo-hoo me. Hopefully you enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you kindly for your time. I hope I can see you once again, and please go support everything Alex and Layla Hormozi do. Thank you kindly for your time, and goodbye for now, my friends. By the way, I don't have any referral code. I know that people, it's weird. He has such a complex business system. Business system. It makes you feel like sometimes he has like a team of like possessed warriors fighting for him because of various referral link and just good business practices for scaling like already successful content. Anyways, I don't have any of that. I I just am getting a lot of value out of it. Bye. Anyway.